Hi, my name is Adriana Bergant, and I'm a president of European Institute of Compliance and Ethics, based in Slovenia and internationally connected. I'm also directing an international Bled Compliance and Ethics conference coming up on October 26 to 27 at Lake Bled, Slovenia, to bring together thought leaders in the field and some of the most engaged compliance and ethics professionals and leaders from the region and around Europe and broader. We are even having speakers from the three continents this year: Europe, US, and Asia. And today I'm on a call with one of them. So please meet Ruth Steinholtz. Hi, Ruth.
Hi, Adriana.
Hi. I want to introduce you properly.
Okay.
So I will say a few more words about you, and then I will let the screen to you.
Okay.
So, so Ruth is all about a culture and a value-based approach to ethics and compliance. And she was actually one of the first in the profession to focus on this in the context of ethics and compliance. She also pioneered the use of ethics ambassadors in 2004 while holding a general counsel position at Borealis. She's a practitioner who wrote a book with an academic, and it's titled Ethical Business Practice and Regulation: A Behavioral and Values Based Approach to Compliance and Enforcement. So she's speaking how to evolve the organization so that you can do the right thing easy, focusing on the outcomes and in an integrated way. So ethics, compliance, integrity, whatever you call it, she says, does not exist in a vacuum. So I'm so happy, Ruth, that you are going to be a speaker at the conference and talking much more about. Actually, we are going to be on the stage and having an extensive interview about, how to build an effective ethical culture in an organization, what it even is. So I know you. I really know you're dedicated to this topic. But before we dig into more professional questions, what do you do professionally, I wonder, can you share a little bit about yourself, which is not part of your professional CV?
Yes, I thought I'd talk about my passion, I guess you would call it, or could be called an obsession in some ways, with pro cycling and with road cycling, which is particularly appropriate since Slovenia is really hitting above its weight in the pro cycling world with two of the best cyclists, well, more than two, but two particularly best cyclists, pro cyclists in the world at the moment. I've always cycled ever since I was young, since I was, I don't know, 3. And then surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, I started to watch pro cycling, and particularly the Grand Tours. And I realized that part of why I'm become obsessed with it is it's beautiful scenery, it's interesting commentary, etc. But it's so relevant. So maybe I can't separate the personal and the professional, but it's so relevant to what we are all engaged in, because here you have the best athletes in the world individually, but they can't win unless they function well together as a team. So you have this individual and team aspect of it. And you also have a sport which until relatively recently was full of doping and all kinds of issues about ethical behavior or unethical behavior. And that sport has, through transparency and a lot of other things, I believe largely overcome that past. And we're in a bit of a golden age now of cycling. And so I'm fascinated by the interplay of the team and the individual. And I'm fascinated by how you turn around an entire sport from being really in terrible shape from a corruption standpoint to being relatively clean. I'm not saying there's never any doping, but I don't believe, and most commentators believe, it's not affecting the sport in the way that it did.
Yeah, definitely you're coming to the right country to do it.
Without a doubt. Could I
Yes,
please meet
welcome.
Most Roglic or today? God, sure, I'd love it. I want their autograph.
It just shows how dedicated you are to the compliance and ethics, because even in your hobby you're finding
Yes.
inspiration. And but yeah, I also find myself that the main distinction for me personally between compliance and ethics is that ethics inspires, right?
Yes,
Ethics
absolutely,
inspires.
absolutely. And that is so important. And actually, yes, we'll talk a little bit about that at the very end. I
Yes,
think that that's
yes,
really important.
yes, yes, we will. So before we go into what would the highlights of
Mm.
your topic be, um, can you share maybe, I'm interested in the projects that you're currently working on, or maybe you have just finished or are just taking up that would be interesting to share with everyone.
I was thinking about what to share. So there's something that I worked on over the past year and a half, and it's something I'd also worked on a few years ago before the pandemic. So I worked with a well-known but small hospitality company here in the UK, which has both restaurants and some hotels and an online business. And originally I did a cultural values assessment for them a few years ago, helping them to make sense of what values were actually being expressed in their culture. Now, and what values, which could potentially be negative, might be holding them back or causing issues. And then for various reasons, I did that project. And then a few years later, after the pandemic, et cetera, I got a call from the managing director, and he was looking, I think, to do some further work with the values, but also to look at the functioning of the team. And so I then started, so first of all, we then really got focused on how do we make sure that the values that they were espousing were genuinely the values that were right for their culture, and how could we articulate them in a more inspiring way.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Uh,
And it's interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of things you said that are very interesting to me. So you did a culture values assessment, and
yeah,
then you were talking about how can an individual be successful in a team.
yeah. So the cultural values assessment gives you, and the tool I use is a thing called the Barrett Value Center. The tool I use, they have various tools. They have a tool to measure the culture of the organization, and then they have leadership assessments, which are also based on values. So they're not, in a way, a couple of the leadership tools are like 360s, but they're kind and shall I say kind and constructive 360s. A lot of 360-degree I think tools end up with people giving feedback in a way that people can absorb. These are, because it's all based on values and it's all based on the same model, it all integrates together very well. So, but organizations don't change, people do.
Mhm.
Okay, this is Richard Barrett, who devised these tools. He always says that, and I agree with him. So if you're going to work on the culture, you do need to go down to the individual level of the people who are the most, people have the most influence, which is usually the senior team.
So this is also a little bit of an insight into your topic that you're going to speak at the conference. And it's titled Your Organization Needs an Effective Ethical Culture, What It Is and How to Nurture Ethical Culture in Challenging Times, even. So you also said something else interesting. So if everyone agrees all the time about everything, it indicates that they are not communicating
Probably.
honestly. So I'm guessing that the communication is a huge part of that.
Yes.
Um, but can you give us like 2 to 3 highlights on your session at the conference beforehand?
The first point I like to say is that the people that we're going to be meeting at the conference, all of your members and people who come to the conference, your jobs are so important, and they're important beyond just, we need to do this because it's the law. Yes, there are legal reasons why we have to do certain things, but in order to be truly successful, I think, in ethics, integrity, compliance, you need to be grounded in what is the basic fundamental reason why we're all here, which is we recognize that corruption is the reason why so many of the world's problems are intractable and you can't fix them. So if you communicate to the business people in your organization that what they're doing is actually making a difference in the world in terms of helping to lower corruption, you're going to get much more engagement than if you go in and say, well, we have to implement this procedure because it complies with this law. Well, I can tell you from 30 years as a corporate lawyer, they're, yeah, okay, fine. But that's not an inspiring message.
Yeah.
An inspiring message, a way of communicating is, we can make a difference. And then the other point I'd like to make is ethical decision making. So ethical decision making, as opposed to unethical decision making or making unethical decisions, can be taught and it can be practiced. And talking about crisis, so I did a lot of work throughout my career through some fluke from my first role in crisis management, and particularly in crisis prevention, in the sense of being prepared proactively to deal with a crisis. So if you have an ethical decision-making model, and I always enjoy creating fun ones with my clients, where there's questions, helping them to understand what questions they need to ask, and you use it to deal with practice scenarios. And you shouldn't try to think of every possible thing that could ever go wrong and do it that way. It's really, you're giving them the skills to know, how do I approach any crisis that might arise using this ethical decision-making model, and understanding that you need to create a safe space where people can talk openly without fear of consequences in that discussion. So some skills in facilitation, etc. And then any of your managers can run short sessions at any meeting, just half an hour. Okay, let's pull out the ethical decision-making model and spend some time practicing, because then when an actual crisis happens, you know what to do. You might not know the answer at the beginning, but you know how to get to the answer. And I think that's important.
Oh, thank you. And this is so interesting. And I think it's going to draw a lot of interest into more, yes, even more content. You highlighted inspiring messages, grounded in the true purpose. This is one of the pillars. Yes. And second is introducing, implementing, and really practicing the ethical decision-making models. Yes. And I'm looking forward for us to deep dive into this, what these models are about in your session, and how some of the examples, because I'm sure you have many, how this has been used and helped.
Yeah.
Thank you. And still, before we go and wrap this up, can you tell people, all the viewers, after this is published, where they can find you and follow you?
Yes, I'm sure you'll put it on your website, but I have a website which is AreteWork, which is AreteWork. It doesn't mean arete. It's not French for stop work. It's arete means excellence or virtue ethics. It's a Greek word which I discovered when I was desperately trying to figure out what to call my little organization. And I'm on Twitter. My name is unusual, so you'll find me on Twitter, probably complaining about something in the British politics, but we won't go there. And I'm also on LinkedIn. So,
and I really warmly recommend to find you and your book and what you are sharing, because I think we all saw how good your questions are, to really think about more deeply about our own work as compliance and ethics professionals, and about the businesses, overall. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Adriana, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you in Bled.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you are going to come and that we are going to be together in person again
Yes.
after such a long time.
Very long time. Yes, exactly. Anyway, thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Yeah.
Bye, Ruth.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.